Yes,
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are able to hear me clearly. So good afternoon and welcome to this session. I hope everybody is safe and healthy in recent pandemic surge in Shanghai. My name is Raj. I am country manager for China Indigene. And what will I do in next 2 minutes is, just share some thoughts around this session before I hand it over to our panel members and the first presenters. First of all, thank you very much to all of you for sparing your time and joining us for this session, which promises to have some engaging conversations around HCPs, healthcare professionals, digital preferences all over the world and particularly in China. What we see is that the way pharmaceutical industry is engaging with healthcare professionals today is very different than what it used to in a few years ago. I think the digital transformation journey globally started 4 or 5 years ago, but we are seeing a very clear acceleration due to COVID in last 2 years. What healthcare professionals expect today from pharmaceutical industries in terms of their engagement is a highly personalized way of engagement. They expect engagement with the content of their choice, the content to be delivered on the channels at the time of their preference, and also in the format that they would like to do that. So this personalized omni-channel engagement is omnipresent, and we can say that this is true all over the world. But there are certain specificities, there are nuances when it comes to individual preferences, and these nuances change from country to country, region to region, culture to culture, country to country, and also depending on the seniority and the speciality of a particular individual healthcare professional. So this is all that what we are going to speak today in today's conversation. And we are going to look at the trends which are particular and specific to China, how China is either following the similar trends as we see globally, or whatever are the specificities and variations that we see in terms of these healthcare professional digital engagements in China. Now, for doing that, it's my pleasure and honor also to welcome, some esteemed panel members who are joining us today. So we have panelists coming in from AstraZeneca and Astellas on the call today, and they will present their perspective on the engagement of healthcare professionals in China. That will happen in due course when we get into the session for the panel discussions. But before we get into the panel discussions, we will first start with a presentation from my colleague Anand, and he will present to you some data points and some interesting trends around healthcare professionals engagement and the trends that we are seeing in China. Before I hand it over to Anand, few logistical points for your information. This session is currently running live in 2 languages, Chinese and English. And at the bottom of your screen, you can see an icon and you can choose the language of your choice to listen to today's conversations. Also, during the discussions or presentations, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in your questions in the chat window, and our moderators will pick up those questions and pass those on to relevant panelists during the time of our panel discussions. So I really look forward to very engaging discussions in next 40 to 45 minutes, and then I hand it over to Anand to take you through the first presentation slides. Over to you, Anand.
Hey Raj, thank you so much, and it's my pleasure to be over here. I want to start by thanking everyone for taking out time today on a Thursday to join us to what promises to be a very exciting discussion on HCP's preferences. As Raj mentioned, what I'll do is for the first 20 minutes, I'll walk you through our biennial HCP survey that we do. We've been running this survey since 2014 just to track how HCP's digital preferences have evolved. So I'll walk you through some of the key learnings from the survey findings, especially for China region. Post that, I will hand it over to Leon, who will moderate a very exciting panel discussion on some of the findings from the report, as well as the perspectives from industry experts within China. As Raj mentioned, and as I bring up my screen, as Raj mentioned, please do feel free to share your questions, your comments throughout the presentation. We will ensure that we pick up these questions and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So with that, now let me jump in quickly to the survey findings itself. As I mentioned, we've been running this survey since 2014, so we've got a kind of good idea about how preferences have evolved over the last 8 to 9 years. This year specifically, what we have done is we have expanded the scope of the survey. We surveyed close to 1,000 HCPs this year across 20 specialties, And you can see the list of specialties on the bar graph on the right-hand side. And this was done across 8 countries, including China. China was also a very important region that was covered as part of the survey. So these 1,000 SCPs, the distribution was that 55% of them came from the US, 24% from Europe, and 21% from APAC. And what we have also ensured is that there's a good representation. It's truly a random group. So there's a good representation in terms of the years of experience, as well as, the number of patients that these physicians are handling on a daily basis. So why this particular survey findings are very important are these provide some really great inputs. These provide some really good data for pharma marketers, for sales rep who are looking at elevating their SCP engagement strategy. These can give them some really actionable items, actionable next steps that they can go and include in their marketing initiatives, include in their SCP engagement strategy. So I'm really hoping that you find some of these insights very helpful and it resonates with what you are seeing in the market, what you are seeing with your customers. So the couple of things happened, because of the pandemic in the last 2 years, right? We all know that there was a big lack of in-person engagement, the face-to-face interactions that reps and other experts enjoyed having with SCPs, they really had a kind of a big decrease. At the same time, there was also a very rapid shift to a lot of digital way of interaction. We saw companies, they had to kind of very quickly move to react to the needs of the market. They had to move to kind of optimize a lot of digital content, move to a lot of digital channels. So that those were one of the most important things happened. Second thing that happened was at the same time, SCPs also became very discreet in the way they wanted to engage with pharma companies over these digital channels. Now, a lot of this was, of course, kind of formed or dependent also on their experiences, interaction experiences with other industries. Examples of those industries include banking, finance, retail, e-commerce. A lot of these industries have done traditionally very well when it comes to digital transformation, and SCPs also happen to use a lot of applications in these industries. So a lot of their expectations also kind of got shaped from pharma through their experiences in these other industries. One was that. So it was very important for pharma companies to understand that what are the motivations, what are the kind of experience that SCPs have, what are the drivers behind what they expect from their pharma engagement, especially on the digital channels. So the first big question we asked SCPs was, what are the primary motivations? What do they really need when they are looking at using digital channels? And almost a big resounding 80% of the SCP said that they use digital channels primarily for personal learning and development. Now, because of the lack of in-person congresses, conferences, these were places where SCPs used to get a lot of good information on disease states, on real-world evidence, on medical content, on clinical content. A lot of this learning, a lot of this development of their knowledge got impacted because of the pandemic. So digital kind of became the factor through which they were able to keep themselves updated. And I think this is very important from a pharma company perspective, because the more pharma companies identify ways to engage or to contribute in the knowledge of the SCPs, I think that's where they can really truly add value and differentiate themselves from the rest of the competition. And this examples of how they could do this is by relooking at the content catalog. SCPs have a very short consideration span. They have very stretched bandwidth. So it's very important to have a content catalog which kind of meets their schedule, which kind of meets their needs and expectations. So maybe having a lot more of bite-sized content, lot more of snackable content which is very simple and easy to understand. Those are the kind of preferences that SCPs have. At the same time, also having a lot of this content being available in a self-served and on-demand basis. That was again a big factor that SCPs had indicated. So again, from a personal learning and development, pharma companies can think about innovative ways to make some of this content available in a self-served or on-demand manner. So some of the examples we are seeing, be it gamification, be it interactive content, micro-learning. Now we are seeing also a lot of metaverse coming in, virtual reality. So these are examples of ways in which SCPs seek value and where pharma companies can add a lot of that value to them. I think the second thing is professional networking. Again, really a lot of these in-person engagement got impacted. So that was the second big really ask or really big motivation from SCVs to stay connected with their peers. And from a pharma company perspective, again, this is very important. Given that SCPs really value professional networking, connecting to the experts, connecting to their peers, here's where again pharma companies have an opportunity, to create those communities, to give them access to experts, be it within their own organization or even from outside. I think the more SCPs get this kind of interaction, and how the more pharma companies can enable this, the greater again the value addition it will be. We saw telemedicine again. Here's an area where China has done extremely well. In the recent past, there was almost 38 times increase in just the adoption of telemedicine in the last couple of years. And this has again been a big ask from SCPs when it comes to using digital channels. And again, pharma companies have a big role to play over here. I think the other two things I want to quickly talk about is more than 60% of SCPs also indicated their motivation to use digital channels for engaging with pharma companies. So even though this is coming at fourth position over here, what I do want to call out is that last time when we ran this survey, there has been a big uptick. SCPs are far more comfortable now using digital channels for engaging with pharma companies. And a lot of this again is being driven by the fact that because of their schedule, it's very easy for them to fix appointment, move it to a different place, consume content at their preference of time. And I think pharma companies need to keep these things in mind, really tap into the opportunity that digital channels provide so that they can, again, not just increase the share of voice, but also the share of engagement on digital channels. So this was the first important takeaway, the fact that, personal learning and development is one of the biggest reasons for SCPs moving to digital channels. Moving ahead, let me talk a little bit about rep interactions. So we, again, like I mentioned before, a lot of in-person engagement got impacted. And I think the biggest impact it had was on the HCP rep interaction. Reps, as all of you know, these are folks who really have strong relationship, personal relationship with SCPs. They really understand what their needs are, what kind of conversations, what kind of content they need. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, this opportunity to engage with the SCPs in a face-to-face or in a physical manner got severely impacted. And going ahead, seeing how the industry is shaping up, we do feel that while it might still come back to how things were operating in the past, it'll never go back to its original form. The future looks like more of, being a hybrid format. So it's again very important to kind of look at the role of SCPs. Like, are they really delivering the value that SCPs seek from them? So we ask the SCPs that as of today, do you feel that pharma reps are able to understand your needs and expectations, especially in the digital world? And almost 95% of SCPs, this is an alarming number, they said that they feel reps do not understand completely their needs and expectations. So this is something which, again, for reps as well as pharma companies to take note of, to take cognizance of. There are, of course, multiple reasons because of why this is happening. The fact that reps are really good at forming relationship, but moving those relationship from a physical format to a digital format, this is not always a straightforward task. Learning new tools, learning to read the body language, learning to see the cues that SCPs give on a virtual channel. These are things that in many cases reps were not properly skilled or trained for. And this had that big impact where SCPs almost felt that in this new way of operating, reps are not able to truly understand how to connect with me and how to really deliver the value. So given that this is still an alarming number, not everything is bad. It doesn't look really gloomy at all. We asked them that, hey, given this big change that is happening, do you still feel that reps can add a lot of value to the quality of interaction? And it was very good to see that SCPs, almost 64% felt that reps can still add a lot of value. And how they can do that is by really understanding their specific needs and sharing only relevant content. What they want is simple content. What they want is relevant content. And as I shared before, a lot of this content is around scientific in nature. It's more of educational in nature. So I think this is where reps will have to really upskill themselves. It's just not about sharing brand centric communication. It's also about sharing communication which is more customer centric. It's about educating the HCPs, who in turn can deliver a far greater value to their patients and improve the health outcomes. So that really stood out. Uh, as Raj also indicated right at the beginning, they want things to be done more in their interest. So they want a lot more of control. They want a lot more of autonomy in their rep interactions. And that's why you see that 60%, close to 60% said that they want those content, that relevant content to be shared only at a preferred time of their choice and a channel of their choice. What I do want to call out very quickly is bring your attention to the third and the fourth bar. If you see the third and the fourth bar, more than 60% of HCPs in China are again really called out that what they want is to make reps themselves or other experts available on demand. Last time when we did this survey in 2019, this was not such a big ask. Only within a span of 2 years, the increase of this requirement by HCP is really manifold. So again, for pharma companies, this is a clear call out from the HCPs that, hey, if you really want to add a lot of value, you want to engage me, what you need to do is not just share relevant content through preferred channels, but also be available, also be comfortable working around my schedule, make reps available, make experts available on their schedule preference. So now let's look at, we talked about rep interaction. Now let's look at content. There is a recent Indegene study which calls out that in 2021 itself, right, there is a huge amount of content which has been created because pharma companies had to shift to a digital way of working. Just the sheer increase in volume of content was a lot. In fact, data shows that the volume of content created in 2021 was almost 4 times the content that was created in 2020. So just to kind of help you imagine this in your mind, we're talking about 4x increase, which is a big increase. At the same time, we also saw that there was a huge increase in the number of channels also. A lot more of channels like webinars started getting used. Social media, there was a big uptake. Remote detailing became really a big uptake. So in many cases, unfortunately, what happened was a lot of pharma companies, what they started doing was, just because they have a lot of volume, they have a lot more channels, it kind of got translated into multiple touch points, which is not really the ideal way. Just because you have a lot of volume and a lot of channels does not mean that it should translate into multiple touch points with the HCPs. So we wanted to understand from the HCPs that, do they feel some kind of a fatigue? Do they feel overwhelmed with the content which was shared by pharma companies with them? So we asked them this question, and almost 62% of HCPs in China, they clearly called out that they do feel overwhelmed to a certain extent by the volume of content that pharma companies are sharing with them. Now, as long as this content is great, they seek value is good. But if the content is not relevant, I think that's where it could lead to a lot of digital fatigue. It could lead to HCPs attributing a certain brand or a certain company with too much of spamming. So it could lead to, again, a negative perception. But when we double clicked, we wanted to understand a little bit more, that is this a clinical content which is driving this fatigue? Is this medical or is this promotional? So we asked the HCPs, what type of content? Is there a specific type of content that you feel that is being overshared with you? And what we learned was 60% of the HCPs in China said that they were very overwhelmed with product related promotional content. So it's a lot more of very brand centric content. And the resounding kind of message from them is that pharma companies kind of need to balance the volume of product related promotional content that they are sharing with the HCPs. The other very interesting thing, and it is very specific to China, what really stood out was when you compare to the global average, globally 41% felt that events related information was being shared a lot. But when you look at China, this number rises to 60%. So again, this is really important for pharma companies to keep in mind. The fact that there are a lot more of virtual engagements happening, not just one company, almost everybody out there is doing some or the other form of virtual conferences, virtual meetings, webinars. So in many cases, what happens is this leads to multiple such invitations, multiple such requests going and hitting the SCP's inbox or going and hitting them through various other channels. And they almost again feel overwhelmed. They're not sure about which events or which conferences to participate. So again, pharma companies need to really kind of balance the just the frequency of communication on events related information that they're sharing with SCPs. Events are great because it gives them, the pharma companies, again an option to share a lot of educational content, but you need to again figure out the frequency of such communication. At the same time, also what I want to call out is also the journey to the event and post the event. There's a lot of again scope over there to make this truly omni channel. What SCPs want is a lot of this communication to be personalized. They want this to be in a truly delivered in a omni channel way. And again, there's a huge scope for pharma companies to maximize their initiatives on this by truly delivering more on a omni channel experience. So that's on the content side. We talked about rep interactions. We talked about the content, whether SCPs are facing any kind of content fatigue. I want to also share with you a quick overview of how this content fatigue varies across specialties, as it was indicated right at the beginning. What this report really stands out, really calls out, is there is no one size fits all approach when you go about thinking about your SCP engagement strategy. SCP's preferences vary by region, they vary by the specialty, they vary by the number of patients they are treating, they vary by the age of the SCPs. There are so many factors. So no two SCPs, it would not be wrong to say that no two SCPs think alike, and no two SCPs again react in the same way in terms of how pharma is engaging with them. So we wanted to understand, are there any specific specialties where this fatigue is happening more? And what really stood out to us was oncologists felt the most overwhelmed with this content. As you can see, almost 72% of oncologists felt that they were extremely overwhelmed. The other specialties which felt overwhelmed were orthopedics, gastro, pulmonology, and dermatology. So these were some of the other specialties. What I want to quickly also draw your attention to is two more specialties, which is immunology and urology. If you look at again the light blue color, you will see that the percentage of SCPs which felt extremely overwhelmed was really high for again these two specialties. So again, as you go about planning your SCP engagement strategy, it's very important to also customize. It's very important to also personalize this based on the specific specialty areas. So very quickly now I'll talk about the channel preferences. We saw there's a big uptick in channels. So webinars have become a very big preferred channel. What I want to really call out is the novelties of webinars is going low. So again, we need to be very careful about not just delivering a great experience during webinar, but also events leading up to the webinar as well as post webinar. So think about how the content is rendered. Think about whether the platform is able to deliver a very engaging experience. Do audience feel, do the SCPs feel that they're part of the conversation? Do they get access to the experts? Is the content again available post the webinar in a simple and easy manner? So webinars is a big one, but I do expect that this uptake will go down in the coming few months. The next is online journals. Scientific content, educational content is a big demand. So that's the reason why you see online journals is a big ask. Websites is very important. What I want to share with all of you is, as much as pharma companies also develop their own websites to share educational content, to share scientific content, they also can think about partnering or integrating their educational content with third parties, because SCPs look at these third parties with a lot more of trust. They look at these as unbiased. So there's again an opportunity over there. Social media, truly at a watershed moment. I think China is truly leading the race over here. I know that a lot of internet hospitals, the communication that happens over WeChat. So I think the world, in fact, has a lot to learn from China in terms of how pharma companies in China have cracked the social media channel to truly engage the SCPs. What I also want to quickly share with you, again, I will not read through all, is draw your attention also to marketing emails. The fact that there was so much of communication that happening, it kind of gave that intention or indication that probably SCPs don't like this channel. But we saw that there is a big uptick in marketing emails also. So if done in a very right way, if the message is personalized, if the message is delivered in the right time, marketing emails can also be a great channel for SCPs to engage with pharma content. Just to kind of share with you, so what kind of content, right? I've been talking about educational content, scientific content. So what is that kind of content that SCPs want? So here's an indication that we got from the SCPs in China. What they want really is a lot more of content from pharma companies in areas such as efficacy, safety, treatment guidelines, clinical data, RWE data. These are the kind of content, and you will see that, this is all that content which adds value, which helps them deliver better outcomes to their patients. So that's a big again clear ask from SCPs that they want pharma companies to share or prioritize a lot more of this content over the typical brand centric or product centric communication which used to happen before. Moving on to the next one, I think you can get the content right, you can get the channel right, but data shows that a lot of SCPs in today's world, they have more than 3 or sometimes 2 devices. I'm sure many of you are taking this call over a laptop, some are taking it on a tablet or a mobile. And as we transition our journey from one device to another, we want that journey to be continued. We don't want a break. And same are the expectations from SCPs. So we wanted to understand if they have any preference. And what we again saw, which really stands out for China, is SCPs in China are far more comfortable consuming medical, clinical, and even promotional content on mobile devices and tablet devices. In fact, China again leads the world when it comes to engaging on these smaller screens. So again, here's an opportunity for pharma companies not just to increase the share of voice, but also increase the share of engagement on these smaller screens. However, they need to ensure that the content they are sharing, which is traditionally been more optimized for larger screens, they need to ensure that it is also optimized. It is rendered and delivered in a very good and easy way to consume on the smaller screens. So, again, optimize your marketing initiatives based on the SCP's device preferences also. As you can see that 80% of SCPs, they like to engage on mobile devices and tablets. So very quickly, I think this is going to be my last slide. We can get everything else right, but at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that we still need to catch the attention of the SCPs, right? They're extremely busy. They have a lot of things on their mind. They're constantly moving from one thing to another. So we wanted to ask if there is a specific time slot that SCPs are far more inclined to engage with the content. And what we learned was both in globally as well as in China, SCPs prefer to engage with the content during the 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. slot. So that's a good time for, again, pharma companies to plan a lot of their campaigns, plan a lot of their SCP touch point. What I want to also quickly share with all of you is when you look at this chart, think about how things were in the past, where reps were kind of bound by the working hours of SCP. Digital gives you that true opportunity to engage SCPs even beyond the working hours. It gives you an opportunity to engage the SCPs also during the weekends. So this is what digital enables, and again, keeping these nuances as we plan our SCP engagement can lead to some really great outcomes. So with that, let me quickly summarize some of the key things that I shared today. Promote a lot more of educational content on relevant platforms. SCPs want a lot more of scientific and educational content. They want this engagement to be done in a very self-served and on-demand manner, so that they have greater control and autonomy over their interactions. Upskilling sales force, not just the sales rep, even MSLs, even the other experts who talk, upskilling them as well as making them comfortable to work in the digital world is extremely important. Design your SCP strategies based on other factors such as device and time. As you saw, these again vary by region and specialties. And finally, also don't think about doing everything by yourself. There are a lot of areas where there's a great opportunity to collaborate, with partners, with third parties. So examples of those are websites. So in those cases, look beyond your own channels. Look at how you can integrate with third parties and truly deliver value to the SCPs and patients. So these were some of the key insights. Of course, the larger report will be made available to all of you. It's a 36 page plus report with lots of interesting content. Happy to take questions. Please drop in the questions in the chat box and Q&A section. But before that, what I would like to now do is really welcome our panelists, as well as hand over the control now to Leon. I know this is going to be an exciting panel discussion, so over to you, Leon.
谢谢非常感谢那个 Anna 刚才的那个介绍。等会我会切换到那个中文的那个频道，如果我们的听众喜欢中文的这个，我们可以在中文频道进行一个探讨。非常感谢刚才那个 Anna 对我们这个 HCP 的这个调研报告的详细的一个讲解。那在整个报告当中呢，我们也可以看到中国区的 HCP 和全球的 HCP 在和药企互动的特性上，无论是互动的渠道、互动的模式、互动的目的，还是互动的主题，都有着很大的中国特色。那今天呢，我们也非常荣幸的邀请到了2位药企资深的数字化转型行业领头人，来和大家一起共同探讨，在中国目前的环境下，我们应该如何应对这些不同，更加高效的、更加有效率的和 HCP 进行互动。另外呢，大家如果在下面的交流过程中有一些想问的问题呢，我们都可以在留言板上把问题打出来，那我们会有专人进行一个登记和处理。也会在时间允许的情况下呢，我们会挑选若干的问题来进行一个互动解答。下面呢，让我隆重的介绍2位嘉宾，他们是阿斯利康中国数字化商业营销总监 Mandy 丁玉洁，谢谢 Mandy。另外呢，我们还有那个阿斯特莱的投资中国有限公司数字化转型的总监 Spencer 于小艺，那我们也非常感谢于总的那个参加。好，那么我们今天呢就开始下面的整个圆桌会议的讨论环节。那首先呢，我想问一下这个 Mandy 就根据我们的调研报告显示呢，在中国有80%的 HCP 表示，他们使用这个数字化渠道的主要动机是进行个人学习和发展。那基于目前众所周知的原因呢，那可能我们需要比较长的时间才能够恢复到以前这种频繁的面对面的这种交流模式。那由于疫情或者其他这种原因，那 Mandy 呢，我们想问一下，就是因为阿斯利康一直是在中国的本地化和数字化转型呢，都是一个领头羊，都做得非常好。那在基于目前的这种情况之下呢，那我们 AZ 做了哪些有效的应对手段，来满足目前我们的 HCP 对于学习发展目标的这种需求呢？
好，谢谢 Leon。那其实我们大家现在，因为我这边呢也是在上海大家也知道上海是这个最近可能已经快2个月的时间，疫情是比较严重的。那么我们几乎所有的同事都是处在一个隔离的这个状态。但是其实对于我们，包括我们的客户来说呢，其实对他们的这个关心还是需要持续不断的。所以在这个阶段呢，我们的很多的同事其实做了特别多的志愿者的一些工作。包括呢，也会通过线上会议，包括微信拜访的这个方式呢，能够持续给到我们客户一些暖情的方案。其实这个时间段，说实话，就是很多的我们的客户都是在一个抗疫的前线。那么这种情况下呢，其实不太适合跟他们去反复的去传递一些就是跟产品特别相关的一些东西。所以我们会有一些比如说疫情的资讯类或者暖心类的一些内容。这个时间呢，其实更适合我们的这个客户其实在我们以前的这个工作当中呢，也会持续的在线上跟我们的客户保持互动。那其实我们会发现说，城市的客户他其实学习的这个渠道和资讯的来源非常多。那其实平时他们经常还是在一些比如说像丁香园易脉通这种通用的平台去做学习会更多一些。那最近呢，也是这几年我们药企的平台也会比较多，所以其实对他们来说呢，很多的资讯已经有一些到就是打脚的这样一个阶段，而不是说缺乏资讯。所以我们这几年呢，也会逐渐的往这个基层的客户这个角度因为
Hello, Mandy。可能现在信号有一些不是特别好。Mandy。 我们等那个 Mandy 稍微连接一下，他目前的信号可能不是特别的好。那正好呢，趁这个机会呢，我也想问一下这个 Spencer 了。其实我们阿斯特莱这块的话，其实在整个的一个数字化转型也是做得非常不错了。我们前面都有非常多的这种交流和沟通。然后根据刚才的那个问题，其实也是目前大家众所周知了。就目前不管是疫情啊，或者是其他的因素，那其实我们这种面对面的这种访谈都会非常的受限制。那从阿斯特莱这一块来讲的话，我们是如何去满足这些 HCP 目前对于个人发展啊，或者是学习的这种需求呢？
对，因为从这个角度上来讲，其实我们不会想把公司的一个平台和产品做得像行业里面像丁香园和一脉通那么的全面，而且我们也不可能做到那么公平公允的方法去 push 我们的内容。所以说我们目前的话是针对我们的这一群医生，我们主要是以肿瘤和特药为主。那这一群医生他们想要看的内容，我们争取是做一些高质量的内容。然后因为目前政策的变化可能会比较多，有一些集采啊和一些审计的那种招标。那如果说有一些产品受到影响的话，那医生他可以去哪里去买到我们的药？如果说医院没有的话，他是否可以介绍他的患者到当地的 DTP 药房去买？那类似的那些信息，因为政策的影响，可能医生那一端他也不知道我们药企的药物可以在哪里就是提供给他们。那因此我们可能会在这一个方面想做得更好一点，就是把我们目前公司的一个规划，我们的铺货的状况，我们的一些产品的新的那些 indication，或者说有一些新的指南出来的话，更快更好的给到我们的医生，大概是这样子的一个方向去做。
更快给到我们的医生，以及一些药物可及性方面，我们也会特别对一些边远地区的一些医生的一些触达。然后针对这一块呢，其实我们前面也了解到，就是阿斯特莱在远程访问，就远程代表、虚拟代表这块，其实我们做了非常多的有益的尝试了。就刚才我们提到，也取得了非常不错的这种成效。那么在于整个的远程拜访 HCP 的实际操作过程中，那我们的代表就是根据您的经验，我们代表有面临一些哪些具体的挑战吗？就在这一块。
我觉得这个挑战是很多的。首先的话，代表其实你知道，就是说，有一些代表，就我们公司而言，他们会相对比较配合一些。那有一些代表的话，可能会觉得远程代表或电话中心这样一种新的模式，可能会危及到他们的工作和他们的奖金的分配制度等等。所以说，在任何一家医药公司开展这类项目之前的话，我们要做好一个内部的沟通。那通常我们做 pilot 的时候，我们会把奖金的分配说得非常清楚。那因为一开始的话，我们是做尝试的情况下，我们的远程代表是作为一个打配合双打的一种模式。然后那我们在选择医院的时候，其实也要就是类似是一个咨询的一个项目。比如说你电话中心你用的代表可能不会有那么多人，那哪些医院是你的重点医院，哪些省份是你的重点省份，那这些可能都要沟通好。包括在项目里面当中，我们地面代表做了什么，我们线上代表做了什么，然后他们定期的沟通然后传达的信息要相对比较准确一点，然后来避免医生可能不知道究竟是谁来负责我的拜访。那像这样的一些事情的话，可能双方的磨合需要一段的时间。
进行一个很好的这磨合，这磨合是一个非常大的挑战。那刚才我们提到这些相关的挑战，比如说远程拜访所面临的这些挑战，那其中呢有个很重要的就是提高我们的那个远程代表的这个他的专业性啊，或者是他的一个素养。那在这些实施对这一块来说的话，我们有实施什么类型的这种培训啊，或者一些具体的一些应对措施啊，来提高我们的销售人员在和 HCP 在进行这种远程互动方面能够表现得更加出色呢？能有一些什么例子？
我们而言的话，我们可能会做的相对比较多一点。首先，作为甲方来说，你要信任帮你运营线上代表的这家 vendor 公司。那一方面，我们会把就是我们公司内部自己培训代表，就说我们代表的 turnover rate 其实蛮高的。那新代表来了以后，那我们的一个公司层面的基础状况是什么样子？就我们公司而言的话，我们可能不像 AZ 那么大。那我们覆盖到的就是公司这个平台能力覆盖到的医院和医生有哪一些，然后他要熟悉他的目标医生。那我们对于线上代表的培训也是一样，就是除了产品层面的培训之外，一些公司的合规， 还有他线上代表所负责的医院和医生，他的一个范围是哪些是我们的重点客户。那所以说这些东西他要知道的非常清楚。那剩下的那部分其实是他们在开展线上代表拜访以后，然后根据日常电话里面医生所拿到的反馈，然后进行不断的学习。那这方面的话，我们也需要我们公司内部的一些配合，比如说医生有一些关于指南的需求，然后对于一些医学问题的疑问，那我们的 MA 或我们的 medical team 他们要及时给出答案。那很多时候，比如说我们的供货有问题啊，我们的一些信息给的不够多，那公司内部掌握该信息的部门，然后他们给到我们线上代表的这个资讯要相对会比较快一点，因为我们可能会有一些罕见病的这种患者，他需要一种药，然后这个医院的医生呢，就是我们没有进那家医院的药房，就是进院没有做好。那哪一个当地城市哪一个医院可以配到我们的药，可能那个医生不知道，那代表去反馈了这个信息以后，那我们给予代表的这个信息要相对及时一点。所以说这个培训的层面是各方位的，产品的，然后他们本身的一些认知，还有从医院医生那边来的信息，我们都要做到位。
的确是，就不管是我们的产品的一些信息，我们 MA 的相关的一些 medical 的信息，特别是我们一些罕见病药物的一些信息，甚至是我们的供应链的信息，在当地的这个市场上，我们的一个供货的一个相关的一些情况，其实这些都是需要跟我们的线上代表之间有个非常紧密的一个信息的沟通，让他们掌握的更全面的信息，我们就可以更好的去 touch，特别是相对一些比较边远的一些地区，一些相对比较广阔市场的这些，就可以更准确的、更快速的把这个信息给 deliver 到当地的这个市场，在之上。
没错。
好的。我也看到了这个 Mandy 已经又重新上线了，可能刚刚这个网络上面有一些问题了。那我们就还是因为刚刚那个回答也是就是问题也是问到一半，那我们再就接回到刚刚的那个场景，就是对。
不好意思，这个就是线上的这种活动啊，经常会发生的事情。我们也经常会发生，比如讲者啊，这个断线，大家都非常着急啊，这种情况。然后这个当中还要计算一个合规率的问题，因为这个时长的问题。所以我其实刚才我刚刚听 Spencer 也在讲啊，其实药企最大的痛点呢，确实是覆盖广阔市场啦。所以我刚刚其实也讲到那个基层这块儿，比如说我们在做基层的医院，我们现在做的形式呢，其实也比较类似啊。除了原先我们做的，比如说网上的会议啊、线上的拜访之外呢，目前也在做，比如说这个虚拟代表呀，包括我们叫线上学术官啊这样的一些情况。那么这种还是比较适合于就是地广人稀。那这些机构呢，相对来说单产比较低嘛，所以我们的代表通常去跑的这个频率是比较低的。那么这部分区域呢，其实线上啊，我觉得大家的期望值可能是需要降低，因为它确实不像线下的代表能够天天去做客情的维护，所以线上呢更多的是做一些比如说品牌的提示呀，包括学术观念的一些传递。那最近呢，我们也在尝试一些新的模式，比如说在没有 MSL 的这个区域啊，在线上也是可以去做线上学术官。那比如说这些区域像县域的医生啊，其实有些县域还是学术的需求是蛮高的，包括一些肿瘤专科的需求，所以我们会在线上呢跟他们做一些学术观念的一些探讨，包括幻灯片的一个辅导。这样的话呢，也更好的帮助这个医生以及他的科室能够在这个学科的这个能力上有所发展。那还有一块呢，我们也发现啊，就是其实在越往下的医院，它还是蛮注重建立这个他的科室和这个医生啊在患者当中的管理的这种能力，包括影响力。所以其实我们也会和一些学协会去合作啊，建立一些患者管理的工具，能够帮他去聚拢一些患者，然后这样更好的提升患者和医生之间的粘性。所以这些其实是对于这种县域市场会比较有帮助的。那其实再往下呢，会有一些村医啊，就是我们覆盖的也会比较多。那这些机构呢，其实跟我们大城市的这种大专家非常不一样，他们其实平时接触的都是一些很接地气的疾病，所以会比较关心的，比如说常见的一些常见病啊、老年病，到底临床一些基本的诊疗怎么去做啊？他们还会希望提供一些，比如说这种技能的培训啊，或者一些检索的工具，甚至是一些可能基层的这种就是机要的目录、一些政策的热点啊、人文类啊，还是新闻类的。那么这些资讯呢，其实我们的自己的代表啊是触达不到的，所以我们还是需要借助一些其他的平台他们在基层有比较好的覆盖的来去做传递。所以这个是我们在医生教育这块有一些小小的这个实践的经验啊。
非常感谢那个 Mandy 的那个介绍，就是我们刚才也整个汇总来说的话，就是有一些相关创新的一些内容，比如说我们的线上的 MSL，就传达一些医学相关的一些内容。那另外呢，我们对一些患者的管理，特别对于一些管育市场，特别一些罕见病，那我们患者的整个的一个社区的一个运作，以及刚才我们讲的一些像一些村医啊，通过一些第三方的这种平台，那这些呢，我们目前都有在做很多的这种尝试。那这个也是英迪姐，我们也会配合大家一起来做更多的类似的这方面的这些数字化的这种尝试，来帮助一起来更好的去触达到这些相关的一些管育的市场的一些领域。那刚刚其实我们也提到了，就是说，针对于像丁香园啊、医脉通啊，其实我们是有蛮多这种第三方的这种平台的。那我们在目前来说，比如说 Mandy，我们目前在跟这些第三方的网站或者这些 HCP 的社区合作，来提供这些相关的这种教育啊、科学内容。那这些方面呢，我们做过哪些有益的一些尝试呢？那有没有一些比较重要的一些经验，就针对于这种第三方网站，那可以跟我们大家分享一下呢？
对，我们其实会发现啊，就是很多内部的平台啊，还是受一些就是合规啊，包括医学的合规的一些限制。其实我们内部平台的一些内容啊，它的这个时效性包括吸引力还是比较有限的。所以其实我们目前呢也是在拓展外部的这个媒体的矩阵。那外部媒体的话呢，可能会分就是通用类型啊，就像你刚刚提到的这个丁香园、医脉通、医学界等等，它是一个通用的平台。那还有会有垂直领域。我们的领域也比较多，你比如说呼吸，我们可能会有南山呼吸、呼吸健啊这样的一些垂直领域的专科媒体，所以我们会去建立这样的一个媒体的矩阵的平台。那对于公司层面啊非常重要的，包括和疾病领域相关的一些活动，我们会用这些平台来一起做这个数字化活动的会前的宣传，然后会中的一些推流，包括会后的一些总结，能够把这个活动的这个效果，包括参会的影响力能够做到最大化。那像最近我们其实大家都比较关注疫情下，其实有这种哮喘患者发病得不到及时治疗，就是死亡的一个案例，所以我们也做了一些就是这种患者疾病的一些教育的宣传。那么我们也当时就是联合了8个媒体的平台来一起做这样的一个患教的宣传，我觉得这个效果还是非常好的。那像其实你刚刚提的还是一些医生教育啊，其实我们会发现就是医生对于患者的这个管理的需求还是比较大的，但是呢，现在是比较缺的就是患者教育的一些内容。那其实我们自己从药企的角度呢，说实话，我们自己做这方面的内容并不是特别擅长，所以我们也会和一些，比如说像腾讯健康啊，我们跟他有合作这个医码通就扫码的这个项目啊，其实它本身也有很多的科普的直播，包括腾讯医点的一些内容，包括是肿瘤领域也会有一些垂直领域的这些合作的社区。那么这些其实都比较有效的去帮我们去增加这块的一些内容的一些吸引力，包括它的内容的形式。所以这些我觉得都是可以去尝试的。那关键是说数字化这个时代啊，就是大家的注意力都很有限，所以内容一定是为王的。那么内容的话呢，确实是和第三方的合作会比较有效啊，这是我们的一些经验啊。
是的，内容为王，特别是在目前那个内容爆炸的一个年代，怎么样通过内容去抓取我们的audience、我们的受众的那个眼球，这是非常重要的一块。那刚刚其实 Mandy 也提到了非常重要的一个 message， 就是我们目前来说很多的一个趋势，也是渐渐的从医生端慢慢的往患者端来做一个相关的一个延展。那我们不管是从跟第三方的合作平台来讲的话，跟医生的这种他的一些教育啊、培训的这种趋势，那我们会慢慢的也会更多的去 involve 到，特别是一些患者相关的一些跟患者之间的一些 engage 一些互动的一些情况之下。那 Spencer 这块呢，就是我知道我们那个阿斯泰这块其实也是做一些特药的，那患者这块其实也是我们非常重要的去聚焦的一个方向了。那对于患者这一块的来说的话，我们目前有一些什么样跟他们之间的这种 engage 的一种方式嘛，或者是我们一些计划嘛，就这一块。
目前的 engage 的方式，我们主要是通过基金会的一些合作，然后再通过一些乙方的 vendor 去帮我们运营一些公众号啊，还有一些网站这样的一些方式来做。那其实还会有一些和保险或怎样的这种项目结合。那我们和大公司的区别呢，是我们Astellas 作为一家比较中型的制药公司，我们可能在数字化上面没有那么大的一个预算，所以说我们在选择合作方的时候，我们肯定要先看清楚每一家公司他们最擅长的 能力是在哪一块。
嗯
那因为我们公司在做一些创新类项目的话，非常注重 ROI， 也就是你的这个项目的回报率会是什么样子。那通常每一家乙方公司，那他们有一些公司可能会号称能够做1、2、3、4、5类服务，但是其实他们的拳头产品只不过是1和2。那我们会在评估的过程当中，先看清楚这家公司的立身立足之本是哪一类的项目。就比如说我自己个人去购买西门子的产品的话，我会去买它的冰箱和洗衣机，我不会去买西门子的手机，对吧？那这样子的话，我们先搞清楚。那如果说有一些公司他们是做患者为主的，然后并且他们的产品相对比较成熟，那我们会考虑和他们去合作。现在的话，大多数的患者项目主要是由我们的品牌组来 drive， 然后形式的话，在市场上是比较多见的那一种。我们也在探索，就是新的一些初创公司，他们有没有什么好的模式，然后来看这方面的一些合作。
刚才的 Spencer 举了个非常好的例子，我们看每家公司要看它最拳头的产品，最顶级的那个服务的一个领域，跟它进行合作，来进行一个强的一个联合了，这也是一个非常重要的一个点。好，下面呢，我们再回到刚刚那个报告中呢，其实还提到了一个非常有意思的一个点啊，就是根据我们的调研报告呢显示，那相对于全球其他的地方，有一个指标呢，我们的差异性是特别大的，也就是中国的 HCP 呢，它更倾向于使用移动端的设备来去查看一些医疗啊和 promotion 就宣传相关的一些内容。那在这方面，我也想请教一下那个 Mandy。那对我们公司来说，对贵司来说的话，我们有没有采取一些特定的一些内容的一些策略，或者一些格式策略，来满足中国的 HCP 对这些设备的这种偏好度？
其实别说是医生了，我觉得我们自己啊，大家可以问问身边的这些90后、00后的这些同事和小朋友们，就大家平时可能晚上到底有多少时间是用在刷这个抖音和快手这些平台上，对吧？其实我们医生也是人嘛，所以他们其实对于这些平时的 social media 呀，包括这种 app 啊和那个微信的使用也是非常频繁的。所以其实我们也会发现说，原先比较传统的可能这种图文啊这种形式已经不太能吸引医生的一些偏好，所以现在大家看的比较多的在短视频啊、音频类的呀，或者甚至是直播类的啊，无论是对医生的教育来说，还是对患者教育来说，其实都是比较有吸引力的。所以其实我们最近也在做一些短视频的这个教育的尝试，比如说我们在基层医生这一块呢，我们和云雀医在合作，那做一些比较短的，大概5到10分钟的这种短视频的课程啊，也是针对我们比较基层的医生。那么他们通过这一系列的这个课程的学习呢，其实也可以有一些这个学分的获取吧。其实对他们来说，既是碎片时间的利用，又可以有一些就是他们实际工作的需求能够解决。那么它的话题其实也不是围绕着只是讲产品啊，它更多的是说，比如说你的这个临床上到底有多少种类型的抗生素，那具体的这个使用的方式啊，或者是说，急诊常见的一些这个病，那么我们怎么去做处理？所以这种是比较贴合就是医生的这个偏好，然后又用稍微短一点的视频的方式去呈现。那对于患者这端呢，就刚才也提到，其实患者的这个吸引力也是比较有限。那现在他们看的比较多的，除了抖音、快手之外，还会有这个视频号。所以其实我们也会有一些这个专家来去录一些短视频，然后传递给我们的这个患者，尤其是在慢病的领域。那我们会发现，大专家讲的一些名医的科普啊，其实对患者来说还是比较有吸引力的。那么在直播这块呢，其实会有比较多的一些合规的限制。那我们有做过的是跟电商平台去做一些科普的直播，那这个科普呢也不是随便去做，还是要结合比如说血糖月呀、血脂月呀，或者是世界肾脏病日啊这种疾病的这个时间点去做一些疾病的科普。那我们和京东和阿里其实都有过相应的一些合作。我觉得这个直播其实无论是对于医生的个人影响力，还是对于患者实际的一个互动的效果来说呢，其实不错的。那讲的那个内容其实也是需要提前脚本需要过审啊，这个在我们内部来说。那么还有一些呢，我们最近也在尝试，比如说音频的一些课程因为我们自己也会有这个互联网医院的一些项目啊。那么互联网医院呢，其实医生也会比较关心说，别的医生他在互联网医院上多点执业，以及他进行患者管理有没有什么样的一些经验，所以我们也会和一些平台去合作，去做一些这种微课堂的方式啊，通过音频的方法来去给到医生。 所以其实这些我觉得都是蛮好的一些尝试吧，我们也会去看这哪些的效果对于医生来说是比较有帮助的，除了我们现在现有的开会啊、讲课啊或者推文章的一些方式啊。
非常感谢那个 Mandy 的确是，特别是在中国目前的这个环境之下，其实我们用的很多的这种设备，我们的这个入口非常多。刚刚也提到了，特别像一些短视频啊，像一些直播啊，像一些患者平台的一些相关的一些互联网医院的一些多点直接的这种音频的这种项目其实我们都会提供很多多样的这种场景来跟我们的不管是跟我们的 HCP 还是跟我们的患者进行一个互动。那感觉我们在中国这一块，其实我们在整个数字化方面的这种多彩性，要比我们在 global 来讲的话，要提供非常多的这种场景在这里。刚刚那个我们 Spencer 提了一个非常有意思的一个比喻就是我们的西门子的家电，我们选择不同的家电。那我们知道呢，就是相对于这些电商快销这些行业来说的话，因为他们是做互联网做那种数字化转型做的比我们早一些，比我们更快。那其实整个的医药行业呢，在采用这种新型的数字化的模式呢，就相对于我们这些传统的这些像电商快销相对于他们来说，我们其实是属于一个新入局者，我们是比他们要晚个2-3年。那 Spencer 就是基于贵司或者您的工作经验呢，那我们有没有从其他的行业，比如说像刚刚讲的这些，获得一些灵感，来开发或者制定一些 KPI 的一些指标，来衡量我们的 HCP 做数字化 engage 的这种效果，这种有效性，就有一些哪些那些指标，我们会去借鉴一些互联网行业或者是快销行业电商行业他们的一些经验在整个数字化的一个交互方面。
是这样，就是说我们医药行业和其他行业，虽然说大家都在做数字化，但是我们相对会比其他行业，特别是 FMCG 互联网行业要慢一点，因为我们就是我们和生命相关，我们有很强的监管和国家政策的因素影响。那其实就我个人而言的话，我们从其他行业借鉴的，不是哪一种项目的做法或者说合作，我们更多借鉴的是他们在写一篇文章的时候的那种出发点，他们在设计一个微信软文的时候，他们用的模式呈现方法是什么样子。因为一些新的合作模式，其实其他行业可能出来，但是就一个新的模式而言，在我们公司的一个合规的探讨，法务可行性的探讨，这个时间可能会比较长。所以说，在这一方面的话，我们从其他行业的借鉴可能会比较少一点。然后从您前面讲到的 KPI 的考量，其实，每一个就是数字化渠道，它的 KPI 都是不一样的。然后就我们公司而言，因为我们花在数字化上面的预算，有限，我们没有办法像大公司一样覆盖到所有的渠道。就像前面 Annan present 的时候，我们有大概10几种、20种可能多媒体渠道。然后医生因为他个人的 preference 不一样，他所在的城市级别不一样，然后个人的选择也会不同。然后你看到就是使用率来话，就是高的可能有70%左右，低的也有50%。然后你很难说从一家公司层面来讲，你要放弃哪一些，我觉得这个就是都有做的可能性。那从我们公司而言的话，因为预算会有限，那我们要确保做的那些渠道做的项目的 ROI， 如果说有比较好的就是判断，能够预测到它的 ROI 会比较好的话，那我们才会选择去投入。我们可以选择不做抖音，可以选择不做一些特别新的那种东西，但是我要保证我做的数字化渠道它的 ROI 这个项目的结果是好的。那 KPI 的话，很多不一样，就是说有一些虚拟代表的话，和一些电商的话，那如果说能够直接和你的销量挂钩，你做一些对比，能够反映出这个项目的介入与否，能够直接帮助到你的销量和就是增长率，那这会是一个非常重要的指标。那其他的话，一些就是医生的engagement 的频次一些你的曝光产品的 awareness， 那这些的话，其实你做任何项目都会有，但是就是看你的一个项目的比如说曝光率它的高还是低来评估。对，
好的，非常感谢那个 对的，对的，好钢用在刀刃上 ，ROI 是我们非常重要的一个点在这。那由于时间的关系啊，就时间过得非常快，其实我跟 Mandy 跟 Spencer 我们沟通这个相关的这个 HCP engage 这一块呢，其实我们还会有很多的这种火花可以进行碰撞。但是我们一看时间目前已经进展到将近4点钟了，我们的整个会议也是进入到了一个尾声。那我下面把这个时间交给 Annette 和 Raj。Hello, Annette and Raj.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Such an interesting conversation, right? Like very interesting views coming in from our panelists. And thank you for that. Few things that really stand out, in today's conversation for me. Of course, there were a lot of points, but some things that I made a note of and really feel that these are very specific points in relation to the digital transformation happening in China. So first and foremost, what I feel is that in this digital transformation journey, China, I believe, is ahead of the world. A lot of things that are happening in China in terms of adaptation of digital channels, I think it is far better than the rest of the world, and many of the numbers speak for themselves. But one thing also has stood out in particularly for China that all the pharma industry probably has picked up this digital engagement with HCPs. I think there also is an element of too much or overwhelming of too much of the content which is getting dished out to these HCPs. And probably that also leads to one of the observations that HCPs have shared, that probably medical representatives do not really understand what I need. So right now probably it is becoming like a carpet bombing, and industry probably needs to calibrate how exactly what type of content that needs to be shared with them. And also loved some of the important points that our esteemed panel members talked about. So Mandy touched upon not just doing a hardcore promotion, but providing some information which is really useful for healthcare professionals, not necessarily always related to the product that is promoted, but as an organization, how we can engage HCPs with meaningful information. That point is important. Spencer, you talked about, again, the medical representatives points that some of these med reps are able to cope up with the change that is happening, but some med reps really need to, be trained and are feeling overwhelmed with this kind of a change. So again, you talked about, the short, attention span of the people because of this digital, avalanche. And then, what we need to develop in terms of content way is something which is, bite-sized content, which is easy for people to take up. So net, I think there are a lot of things that are there. A lot of things are going well. There are a lot of things that industry will need to change, course correct, learn over the period of time and fine tune its response. But I feel very happy, to be part of this webinar and, hearing, these wonderful comments from our panelists. What we will do for all the attendees who have attended this, webinar, we will be sending the presentation as well as recording to you over an email in a very short period of time. Also, this was a shorter deck, so we'll send you the larger version of the deck so that you can look into the other data sets and data points also that we have collected. So I want to thank you for joining for this particular webinar. And last but not least, please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists, Mandy and Spencer, for sparing your valuable time and sharing your insights and your experience in this area of very important digital transformation, the way it is happening in China. So this is one-on-one. I think we will run many such sessions after today. And thank you everyone for your time. And I wish you, stay safe, stay healthy, have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
也非常感谢大家的参与。
好 ，Thank you so much. I get offline.
Yeah.
Bye.